Today we're going to talk about merchandising, and we're going to focus on the planning and the programming side of merchandising. This is session 4, and the name of the subject is Export Merchandising and EXIM Documentation. So with that, we come to the end of the first section, and broadly we have tried to discuss the roles and responsibilities of merchandising in an apparel export house. In the second section, we are going to talk about time and action calendar. Now, what is time and action calendar, and what actually happens? What is the importance of time and action calendar in an apparel export house is what we are going to see in the subsequent slides. So what is our time and action calendar? Now we can see in this visual that it looks like an Excel sheet with a vertical list of activities to be undertaken to execute an order. And on the horizontal axis at the top, we have the dates. So time and action calendar is the illustration of showing the starting and ending dates of each of the activities that have to be undertaken to execute an order. So for example, from this calendar, we can see that a particular order, when will the fabric be ordered, and on which date it is expected to be delivered into the factory. When will the production start, and on which date the production is going to end. And in between, when is the finishing going to begin, and on which date the finishing is going to end. That is essentially a time and action calendar. Now, executing an apparel order is a complex task and requires various departments to work in perfect coordination in order to deliver on time. The fabric department is supposed to get the fabric on time. The sample making department, they are supposed to make the samples correctly and fast so that the sample approvals are received on time. And once the sample approvals are there, the fabric and accessories are in place, only then the production can start. Now, proper execution of the order needs proper planning on behalf of all the departments. Now, if an order is supposed to be executed on time, everyone should be able to see when will the fabric be ordered, when will it come in the factory, when will the production begin, when will the finishing begin, when will the packing begin. Everyone should be able to see that, and everyone should understand the importance and the speed that is required to do the job so that things happen in time and nothing gets delayed. If the fabric does not come on time, the production will get delayed. And if the production is delayed, then everything else will be delayed, and therefore the shipment will not leave on time. Now, each department makes its own plan schedule. So fabric people, they are going to understand the fabric requirement and they'll make their own calendar. They'll make their own schedule. So for all types of orders which are being taken by the factory, the fabric department is going to only focus on the fabric part. For style 1, style 2, 3, 4, 5, what is the fabric? Who are we ordering it to? When are they? When is the fabric mill supposed to deliver the fabric 1, fabric 2, fabric 3, all of that. Now the sum total of all these plan schedule, I mean the production plan schedule, the finishing plan schedule, the fabric plan schedule, the sum total of all these plan schedule is called the time and action plan. And it is illustrated using a timeline or a calendar, which is called the time and action calendar. And that is what is illustrated in the top right corner of this slide. The merchandisers and the production planning and control team, they prepare their respective TNA calendar. Merchandiser will make his or her own time and action calendar, and the production planning and control, they are going to make their own time and action calendar. And the merchandiser, when the merchandiser makes the time and action calendar, it includes pattern making and sample making and ordering of the fabric and everything. Production planning and control, they are least bothered about the samples and other things. They are only bothered about on which date the production people are going to get the fabric and accessories and all the approved samples and the approval to go ahead with the bulk production. So the production planning and control will make its own TNA calendar, which is only going to be about the production and other activities. And let's look at the making of a TNA. How do we make the TNA? Now, time and action calendar. Time and action is the activity chart with corresponding dates. On which date, what is supposed to begin, and when is it supposed to end, or when is it supposed to be completed. Now, which activities? So broadly speaking, we have patterns, we have the fit approvals, we have the fabric and the accessory ordering, and the fabric and accessory approvals, and then the production, the finishing, packing, inspections, all the inspections in between, and then the final inspection, and then sending the shipment out of the factory to the destined place. So if you want to make the time and action calendar, you should know what are the activities, how much time each activity is going to take. Only then you'll be able to make the calendar. Now, one must know the process flow of a particular order and the corresponding list of tasks to be undertaken. Now, if you have a t-shirt which has to be printed first and then embroidered and then it has to be stitched, then the flow chart is going to be different. If you have a t-shirt order in which the t-shirt has to be stitched first and then the printing has to be done and then the embroidery has to be done, then the flow chart is going to be slightly different. Now, the correct flow chart has to be in place, and only then you are going to get the time and action calendar correct. Otherwise, everything is going to go haywire. So broadly speaking, when we are making the time and action calendar, we are looking at the production capacity, the lead time, and the delivery date. Now, what goes into production capacity? So how much is the cutting capacity, the sewing capacity, washing capacity, finishing capacity? Based on that, the time and action calendar can be made. So for example, sewing. How much can a factory produce? How many shirts per day or how many trousers per day? And what is the lead time for the raw material, for the sample making, for the production? And when we say the lead time is the amount of time required by the factory to, let's say, source the raw material or to make the samples or to complete the production. That is the lead time. And then the delivery date. What is the delivery date which the factory has negotiated with the customer or the buyer? So you have the order, you have the delivery date, and all things that are going to happen between this period will go into the making of the time and action calendar. Now, time required for the basic activities. Now, that is something which is on the fingertips of any senior merchandiser, and any merchandiser who's worked for about a couple of years would know what is the approximate time required for basic activities. So, what is the time required to make the samples? How much time does it take to source the gray fabric? How much time does it take to dye the fabric? So normally 5 to 7 days is required to dye the fabric. Gray fabric, if it is one of those regular fabrics like poplin or voile or cambric or a cotton velvet or a corduroy or a 6.5 ounce denim, these are some of the fabric which are available all the time. Same for polyester georgette and viscose georgette or silk georgettes or crepes and chiffons, etc. These are all prevalent fabrics. So if you order the gray fabric, within 3 to 4 days, you'll get the gray fabric. If you're looking at about 10, 20, 30,000 meters, you get the gray fabric, get it checked, send it for dyeing. Dyeing is going to take you about 5 to 7 days. If it is printing, it will take at least 10 to 12 days. And if it is yarn dyed, it's going to take at least 22 days. So that is something that a merchandiser should be aware of. And if you're looking at accessories, laces, buttons, uh, labels, etc., all of these take very less amount of time. Stitching thread is, for example, if you give the order today, tomorrow it will be delivered to you. Regular buttons, if you order today, by tomorrow it will be delivered. So that's about accessories. But if you're looking at some of those crochet laces, etc., they may take about 5 to 10 days. And if you look at the lab test, now some of the lab tests can be done within 24 hours, but there are some tests which take more than 24 hours. So in that case, you may get the test results in 2 to 3 days. And till such time, you don't get a green signal from the lab test, as in everything is okay, you cannot start the production. And production, what is the garment, how complex it is, how many machines do you have, and therefore in how many days will you be able to complete the production. And finishing, again, how many people do you have, how many washing machines do you have, and therefore, and what is the current load, how much available capacity do you have, and based on that you can ascertain what will be the time required to complete the finishing. And same for packing. Normally packing takes about 1.5 days, meaning to say that if the finishing has started today, so from tomorrow, or from day after tomorrow, the packing will start. So the day the finishing ends, nearly another 24 hours, the packing also would be completed. And then of course inspections are going to happen in between, throughout. And this is our typical time and action calendar. Now this is for Lily Clothing Company. It's an Indian company. And this time and action calendar, you can see that we have the serial number, and then we have the key processes, and then we have the planned start dates, and we have the planned end dates, and who is the person or the department responsible for that particular activity. And we can see over here, the brand is Lily Clothing Company. They are working for the buyer Monica. The style number is 4041. It is a dress. The order quantity is 2,000 pieces. The purchase order has been issued on 20th of November, and the delivery date is 8th of January. So from 20th November till 8th of January, all the activities have to be listed, and on which date it will be started, and on which date it is going to end. Now, when you are calculating the consumption of, let's say, fabric or accessories, it does not have a start date. You have to do it on a particular date or by a particular date. So that's why we don't have a end date. But for something like production and finishing and cutting, etc., it will have a start date and it will have an end date. Now, after perusing through this calendar, it's fairly clear that there are some things which can happen simultaneously, and there are some things which will happen one by one only. So if you're ordering the fabrics, no one is stopping you from making the patterns. And when your fabric is getting, when you get the gray fabric, only then you can get the fabric dyed. When the fabric is dyed, only then you can send it for lab testing. So fabric ordering, fabric dyeing, fabric lab testing is going to happen one by one. But in the meantime, patterns can be made, samples can be made, approvals can be taken. So the approvals for the fit and measurement and the ordering of the fabric and accessories, both of them can go hand in hand. Now, if you can see in this slide, cutting is starting on, let's say, day 1. And from day 2, stitching can immediately begin. And cutting may take about, let's say, 6 days. But stitching may require more number of days. Now, in this case, we are looking at somewhere around 15 to 18 days for stitching. Now, once you start the stitching, by the third day, the production is going to start coming out of the machines. So the moment the pieces are coming out of the machine, immediately those pieces will reach the finishing, and the finishing is going to begin, which is washing and packing, washing and ironing, and then other things. So the factory is not going to wait for the cutting to start and end, and then it will begin stitching. The factory is not going to start the stitching and end the stitching, and then it will start the finishing. The moment certain amount of cutting has been done, stitching will start. And the moment the pieces start coming out of the production line, the finishing will start. So you can see that it takes 6 days to do the cutting. The stitching continues for another about 10 days, and finishing has started from the third day. And normally it has been seen that the day the stitching is completed, by the next day or another 48 hours, the finishing will also be completed. So we can see those overlap between cutting and stitching and finishing, and that is how the planning is done. Now, the basic question, why do we even make a time and action calendar? If you don't make a time and action calendar, you will not know what is happening in a style right now and when are the things supposed to happen in that style and whether we are in time or not, or is anything getting delayed or not. So all these things is possible only if you have a time and action calendar in front of you. So time and action calendar, it is essential for timely shipment of an export order. It helps to optimize the available resources. So when you are making the time and action calendar, you will know how many machines are available, how much of washing and finishing capacity do you have, and therefore accordingly you can use the resources to the maximum and not waste the resources, or the resources will not go idle on any given day. Now, time and action calendar, it helps in enhancing the productivity by streamlining the pre-production activities. Now, if an order is supposed to go earlier, it simply means that the various activities for that particular order has to be started on priority. Any order which has a delivery date later, those things can be done in second priority. So time and action calendar will help in streamlining the pre-production activities, all those things which have to happen before the production. So all the pattern making, sample approvals, ordering of the fabrics, ordering of the accessories, taking the fabric and accessory approval, getting the fabric and accessories lab tested, getting the samples tested, so that you have all the approvals in place, you have all the materials ready, and you can hand it over to the production people to start the bulk production. And like it was mentioned, if you have a time and action calendar, only then you would know what is the current status and whether there is any delay or deviation. And if there is any delay or deviation, then control it. Meaning to say that if the production can be seen that it is delayed, then how do you control it? You may increase the number of machines or you may input more number of overtime so that you are still able to achieve the deadline. We will now look at the points of consideration while making the time and action calendar. And for now, we'll take this example of the peach colored t-shirt with a 3-color baby panda print on the chest. So the points of consideration, one of that is production capacity of the plant. The planning can be done only when it can be ascertained as to how many machines are available for this particular t-shirt and on which dates. And based on that, one can calculate how many days will be required to complete the production. Of course, what is the type of merchandise? If it's a basic t-shirt, it can be made faster. If it is a t-shirt with printing, it's going to take more time. If let's say the eyes of the baby panda is embroidered, it's going to take all the more time because the t-shirt has to be made, then it has to be printed, and then it has to be embroidered. So embroidery person may be different and the printing guy is different. So the t-shirt may be traveling 20 kilometers from the factory to another place of printing, and then from there it will go to the embroiderer place, which may be another 40 kilometers. And then again it has to come back to the factory. So the type of merchandise also would have to be considered. Now the fabrics and trims manufacturing complication. There will be a lot of times when new types of fabric or new types of accessories will be introduced or will be proposed by the buyer. And if you want to take the order, you will have to accept those. So once you have taken the order, you will also have to source those fabrics and trims. And the new fabrics and trims might come with their own complications. So if there are complications, you will have to include buffers in your time and action calendar so that you are able to meet the deadline. Normally, it is preferred that if a new fabric or a new accessory is involved, please take extra time as a buffer, because we do not know how much time would that fabric or the accessory take in terms of manufacturing. The next consideration is shipment details, whether the shipment has to be sent by sea or by air. That is the mode, the shipment mode. Method can be, it will be packed and it will be flat packed and put inside the carton and then sent, or it will be in the poly bag along with a hanger and it will be sent through the container. So those are the methods, and the different mode or different methods come with their own complications. So that it is, before you make the time and action calendar, you have to first find out what is the method and what is the mode of the shipment. Of course, you have to look at the holidays. In India, you may have holidays. We have a lot of festivals. So those festivals have to be taken into account. Let's say August is the month in India which has 3 or 4 holidays. Now these national holidays, you cannot open the factories on those dates, which means that your production or all the activities, it will be delayed by at least 4 days because there are 4 holidays in August. So those holidays have to be taken into account when the time and action calendar is being made. If you are going to do the production from February to March, just take out the calendar, the national calendar, and see how many festivals are there in the month of February and March. And then accordingly you can do the planning. Your planning is going to be far more accurate. Festivals of manufacturing country. Let's say you have to buy some accessories from China. Now, Chinese have their New Year, which lasts 14 days. Now, if that New Year is happening anywhere between the time that you will be ordering your accessories, in that case, for those 14 days, nothing is going to happen. So your accessories will come to you with a delay of at least 14 days. So it has to be taken into account. And if you know that the Chinese festival is going to fall in between, then you have to tell your buyer that the accessories will be delayed by at least 14 days, and therefore you will need more time to deliver the goods. Festivals of country from where raw material is imported. So that's the example of China, the Chinese New Year. Festival of the manufacturing country. Let's say you are importing garments. Then you look at your own holidays in your country. You look at the country in which the manufacturing will be done. their festivals, and then you look at that country from where the raw material will be imported. So all of these things have to be looked into when you are a buyer, and accordingly you will gauge or evaluate the time and action calendar which has been made by the export house or the garment manufacturing uh, company. And then the logistics facilities. Now, if you are, let's say, producing garments somewhere in some village, in that case, you will not have a transport nagar over there. It will take at least 24 hours to send the goods from that village to the nearest town. And then from that town, it will be sent further by train or by truck to any of the a city like Kolkata or Mumbai, from where the goods will be custom cleared and stuffed on the ship to be exported to the country of your buyer. And now we'll look at some more points of consideration. Uh, there is buffer required from each department. If the fabric department says that I will arrange for the gray fabric in 3 days, it's not necessary that the fabric will come in 3 days. Anything can go wrong. So instead of 3 days, they'll tell you 4 days or 5 days, because they'll keep a buffer of at least 1 to 2 days. And it makes a lot of sense to keep buffer in at each phase. For production, you will keep a buffer of at least 2 to 3 days. Same for finishing, washing, packing. So buffer is required from each department. Accordingly, the time and action calendar should be made slightly relaxed, not very tight. One more point of consideration is the political stability of the country. So if you want to place orders with country like Pakistan at any given, or let's say Afghanistan, at any given point of time, because these countries are very volatile, politically speaking. So in that case, you will make the time and action calendar keeping a lot of buffer, because at any given point of time, civil unrest or social unrest may happen. And let's say flexibility of the freight forwarder. The best example in case of India is that vessels from India leave only on Sundays from Mumbai, which means you have to send the goods. Your goods should reach Mumbai latest by Tuesday evening, and only then your clearing and forwarding agent will be able to get the goods and the documents cleared, custom cleared, and send it by the coming Sunday. If it gets delayed even by a single day, your shipment will not leave on the coming Sunday, it will leave on the next Sunday. So you will be delayed by at least 7 days. So the flexibility over here is that it's actually very rigid, that the vessels from Mumbai, they leave only on Sundays. But if you talk about airlines, aeroplanes are leaving every day. So if you have to send the goods by air, you can send it on any day. If your shipment is delayed by 2 or 3 days, it will only be delayed by 2 or 3 days. But if you are delayed by even 1 day, in case of sea shipment, you will be delayed by at least 7 days, because of the rigidity of the fact that the vessels leave from Mumbai only on Sundays. So how flexible is the freight forwarder? That also is going to that should be taken into consideration when making the time and action calendar. And one very critical thing is the response time from buyer at different stages. You send fit sample to the buyer and they take 4 to 5 days to respond. You send the size sets, again they take a lot of time. You send the fabric for approval, they take a lot of time. If they take a lot of time, in that case, you will make the time and action calendar accordingly, because you know that a particular buyer is in the habit of delaying, is in the habit of giving the approvals late. So you illustrate it in your time and action calendar that on certain date you are sending the sample for approval, and after 5 days you are getting the approval. Now, if the buyer says that why have you taken 5 days for approval, then you have this point to put forth that because your office takes 5 days to give an approval, that's why we have kept 5 days for approval in the time and action calendar. So if you want me to remove those 5 days, instead of 5 days, if you want me to keep one day, then you will also have to ensure that you give the approval within one day on receiving the samples. After receiving the samples, if you take 5 days, we can't do anything about it. And then you cannot blame us that we have not given you the shipment on time. Another thing that has to be considered is the time required for custom clearance. Now there are instances where some products have some accessory or some fabric which may fall under some category, because of which the customer will investigate, and therefore it will take more time to clear the goods. So if at all your product has some let's say buttons made of seashells. Seashells are aquatic animals. Do seashells fall under endangered species? No, but customs does not know about it. So they will investigate, and only then, if they have this understanding that seashells are not endangered, only then they will give you the approval. So your shipment may get delayed. So that is also a point of consideration. And the cutoff dates for shipments. Again, like discussed earlier, the shipments leave from Mumbai only on Sundays. So your cutoff date is 5 days from that Sunday, which is Tuesday. So by Tuesday evening, your goods have to reach Mumbai. Only then your goods will be able to catch the coming Sunday vessel. So that is the cutoff date is the Tuesday evening. That is the cutoff date for shipment in India. Now, if you look at the time and action calendar, so the major line of activities, the three things that have to be done is first is the sample making, and along with that, the approvals. So make the fit sample and the approval, the size set and the approval, the pre-production sample and the approval. So this is one line of activity. Second line of activity is the raw material. So you have to get the fabrics and the labels, stitching thread, etc., etc. And the third is the production, where the actual production will be done, where the raw material will be converted into finished goods. So these are the three major line of activities if we are talking about time and action calendar for garments. Now we're going to discuss these three areas one by one. So first one is sample making. So we have the fit sample for the purpose of evaluating the patterns for the first size, for the medium size. Then the size set sample, that is to evaluate whether the patterns are correct for all the sizes. Then the seal sample. Seal sample is where the samples are made for approval by the buyer, and it will be made in the correct color, correct print, correct fabric, and correct stitching and everything. And it will be sealed, and sealed sample is something which carries a seal by the buyer. If that seal is broken, the sample becomes invalid. So that sealed sample is what is handed over to the production team, and the production team follows the sealed sample to the T, meaning to say that for them, the sealed sample is the final sample. They have to follow that sample accordingly. Then we have the pre-production sample, which is the sample. The pre-production samples are samples which are made by the production department before they start the actual bulk production. That is to show the method and the quality that the production department can deliver, and that has to be approved by the buyer. And then we have the TOP sample, which is top of the production sample. Top sample is the production has started, the inspector will come and take any one random sample, check it, get it back, send it to the buyer, stating that this is the kind of production that you are going to get. That is the top sample. Now, when we have these samples, on which date the making of the fit sample will start, by which date the fit sample will be made and couriered to the buyer, and by which date the approval is expected. And the moment you get the approval, then the next set of sample has to be made. And likewise, that is in sample making. If we talk about the raw materials are primarily fabrics and accessories. So when we talk about fabrics, what are the various stages of approval? So first is the quality of the fabric. So first thing that we do is we source the fabric in the actual fiber and the count and construction, and we send it to the buyer for approval. Once the quality of the fabric is approved, then it is sent for dyeing or printing, whatever is the order. So there we talk about the aesthetics. Aesthetics meaning the peach color is as per the color standard or not, whether the baby panda, the color white, black and gray, the colors are matching or not, whether the design is correct or not, whether it is proportional or not, and things like that. That is aesthetics. And then the lab test, which is FPT. FPT is fabric package testing. Now in this lab test, the lab tests the fabric for physical and chemical properties. And if the lab test reveals that everything is okay, only then you can release the fabric to the production for bulk cutting and production. Otherwise, it cannot be done. Then we have the accessories. Same for accessories, let's say button. So the quality of the button has to be correct, and the color and the feel and everything which comes under aesthetics, that should be okay. It has to be approved by the buyer, and then the lab testing has to be done. Now, after the fabric has been tested, FPT has been done, fabric package testing, then the garment has to be made. When the garment is made, before the garment is made, the accessories, which is stitching thread and the labels and the buttons and the embroidery, everything, whatever is involved, that has to be sent for testing. Once all the accessories have been approved for color, for the looks, for the quality and everything, then the garment has to be made with the correct accessory and with the correct fabric. Once the garment is ready, let's say the garment is ready in this peach color along with the panda print, then this garment will be sent to the lab for testing of the garment. So when the garment is tested, actually they tear the garment. You have to send 3 samples. They'll keep one sample as it is for reference, and in one sample they are going to tear it and do all kinds of exercises, and the other one they will do the testing of the garment in terms of shrinkage and change in the appearance of the garment after washing or dry cleaning, etc., etc. So that is called garment package testing. So in case of raw material, these are the various stages involved, and that has to be included in the time and action calendar. And when we talk about production, the first thing is the production cut date, the planned cut date. Now the planned cut date PCD means the day on which all the samples have been approved, all the patterns are okay, all the raw materials have been approved for production. So the date on which the bulk cutting can be done is called the planned cut date, PCD. Once the cutting has been done, then we have the production start date and the production end date. And along with that, we have the finishing start date and end date, packing start date and end date. These are the dates which are related to production, which has to be included in the time and action calendar. We will now take one such example where we will try to calculate how many days are required to produce a particular order. Now, the example that we have taken over here is that of a style, which is 5,000 pieces, and that style can be made in 23 minutes. The standard allowed minutes is 23 minutes. And the factory has 35 machines available for this particular style. And the factory has an efficiency of 55%. It may be a mid-sized factory which has yet to evolve to higher efficiencies. So with 55% efficiency, how many days would it require to produce these 5,000 pieces of a style which has a SAM value of 23 minutes? So the formula is simple. The order quantity is 5,000. We multiply it with the SAM, which is 23. So 5,000 into 23 is going to give you the number of machine minutes which are required. So 5,000 into 23 is that. Now we divide it by the number of machines available, which is 35. And because it is 8 hours of working every day, so we divide it by 8. And of course, into 60, because every day we have 8 hours, and 8 into 60 is 480 minutes. So there are 35 machines and 480 minutes available every day for the factory, and it is running at 55% capacity. So we multiply 5,000 with 23 and we divide it by the number of machines available, the number of hours available, and number of minutes available in every hour. And we divide it by the efficiency. Efficiency is 55%, which is 55 by 100. So when we divide this, we get 12.44 days. So we take a round-off figure of 13 days. So what we are saying here is that the factory will require 13 days to manufacture these 5,000 pieces using 35 machines, and it has an efficiency of 55%, and 55% means only 55% of the time the machines are being used. So therefore, it will take 13 days. If it was working at an efficiency of 100%, then it would take somewhere around 6.5 days, just half of this. But because the efficiency is only 55%, therefore it will take double the number of days, which is 13 days.